All right, good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Welcome to the February 24th, 2025 City of Burlingame Planning Commission meeting. For all in attendance today, please note that this Planning Commission meeting is being held in person and using the Zoom webinar format. Please note that we are not accepting remote public comment during the commission meetings. Agenda item number 2, roll call. Record should note that all 7 members of the commission are present this evening. So therefore, there should be no agenda item number 3, which is request for AB 2249 remote participation. There are none. Agenda item number 4, review the agenda. Staff, do we have any changes or additions to the agenda?
Yes, just one change. Item 8A, this project is for 132 Channing Road, has been continued to a future meeting. So for anyone that's online or here in person, 132 Channing will not be heard this evening.
Very well. And recusals wise, I have to recuse from item 7A, 1536 Columbus Avenue, as I live within 500 feet.
And I have to do the same.
Any other recusals?
That's it. To clarify, Commissioner Schmidt, that's the same item number 1536.
Okay. Agenda item number 5, public comment non-agenda. Members of the public may speak about any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future Planning Commission agenda may do so during the public comment period. The Ralph Brown Act, the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the Planning Commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Do we have any members of the public attending this evening that wish to speak on any item that is not on our agenda? Okay, and did we receive any public comment email?
There were none.
All right, we'll move on. Agenda item number 6, consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine. They are acted on simultaneously unless separate discussion and/or action is requested by the applicant. A member of the public or a commissioner prior to the time the commission votes on the motion to adopt. This evening, we have one item on the consent calendar. Item 6A, approval of the February 10th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting. Would any member of the public or Planning Commission like to pull this item for discussion? Nope. Then do we have any motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Commissioner Haran, seconded by Commissioner Schmidt. Any discussion? No? May we please have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Camarado?
Aye.
Commissioner Pfaff?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Aye.
Commissioner Shores?
Aye.
Commissioner Say?
Aye.
Vice Chair Haran?
Aye.
Chair Lowenthal?
Aye. And our consent calendar passes 7-0-0-0. All right, agenda item number 7, action items. We have 2 this evening. First one is item 7A, 1536 Columbus Avenue. And I just had a question for staff. Due to the proximity, am I allowed to still stay in as a public to listen, or do I have to leave the chamber?
Uh,
Gotta leave.
leave.
You're within 500 feet? Yeah, you have to leave the chamber.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, while they're recusing item 7A, 1536 Columbus, if you're the applicant or attending the meeting on Zoom, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Let the record show that Commissioner Schmidt and Chair Lowenthal are recusing from this item. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications on this project? Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you. This is an application for a major design review amendment for changes to previously approved first and second story addition at 1536 Columbus Avenue. The property is zoned R1. This application was before the Planning Commission on April 11th, 2022, and it was approved at that time for a major design review application for first and second story addition. The previously approved project included converting part of the rear portion of the garage into an accessory dwelling unit, and the floor area was 2,149 square feet, where 2,751 square feet is the maximum allowed. The applicant is currently under construction with their project, and they would like to make exterior modifications to the house, which require an application for an amendment for this major design review. Changes include removing the exterior stone veneer and adding board and batten siding to match the rest of the house. Staff would note that the stone veneer on the chimney would remain, and then eliminate shed roof above the second story windows at both the front and rear elevations. Findings for the design review amendment and 12 conditions of approval are recommended and included in the resolution that was provided to the Planning Commission this evening. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for staff? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you would like to add about your project?
Hi, my name is Jackson. I'm the owner of the property. I don't know if Jesse, my architect, is also here, but I have requested for the change and update. Primary reason is that I want to be honest, it's job security. I've been told that I am being laid off from my tech job. And as you know, there's just a lot of uncertainty in tech. And so I'm trying to do my best to get the project complete, as well as keep the same design and aesthetic, but just reduce some of the costs, whereas, being that the stone veneers and some of the awnings are on the plan, this would help us a lot. And again, I'm not a developer. I am, this is my home that we want to move into. And so hopefully the commission will be okay with making some of these minor changes. And that's it.
Okay. Did you want to wait for the architect or no? You're good.
Yeah, I'm good. Like, I don't think there's much that I can add there. Like, again, I'm trying to keep the design as the same as possible while just reducing some of the cost for me to, just pass this uncertainty. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Say?
Yeah, just a quick question. When I'm taking a look at the house today, I think I noticed that the front door style has changed. Is that correct?
The front door style. I mean, I didn't know that the front door had to be exactly on this plan. I just found the door that fit the design from Home Depot that I could find, and that's what I put in there. So I wasn't sure that they had to be exact kind of, on this plan in terms of the door styling.
I think we generally try to match the style. I don't really have an issue with the style that I saw there, but I just wanted to clarify that. And then likewise wanted to know if the garage door style will remain as.
Yes. Yes, the garage door style, we found a match. So that will be exactly the same that's on the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any members of the public attending in person who wish to speak on this item? Please note that speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Well, I think that we should possibly just have Jesse give us a rendition of what the front door will look like, so that we can all approve that. I don't really have too much of an issue with the veneer stone. I thought it would be great if they could just leave those kind of awnings above the two windows. But other than the stone itself, that really didn't bother me.
I have a similar comment. I mean, they're expensive is the problem, but I had a comment because it's very vertical now. I know we commented on that originally. So my comment was the same about the, I personally am not a big fan of the glue-on stone anyhow, but I thought that the awnings were quite nice, but I don't know. They are expensive, so it's a budget issue.
Do you recall generally what the difference in the door was that you saw on the site? Like a full glazed or?
Not full glazed. I can't remember. There might have been some small lights on top. It was kind of like a typical Craftsman style door with a dental shelf or something like that. That's what I seem to recall. I didn't have my plans with me, and so I was.
Yeah.
just
And
for my-
I'd be okay if staff could look at that. It doesn't have to
Right.
come back to planning
Mhm.
itself. If staff can take a look at, and say that they approve it, that would be fine.
And it looked like it was a wood door, not like a pink grate door.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I agree as well. Obviously, it'd be nice if this could stay original, but in the case that it can't, I would prefer to keep the awnings over the stone veneer.
I would say the same for at least the front elevation. think I can give them up in the back.
Yeah.
But on the front, I think they're a nice detail
Were there also?
as a compromise.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're removing the ones in the back as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think in that case, it's not the worst thing in the world if they go from the back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not
The-
worried about the back. I think the front would
Front.
be nice.
Yeah, I agree. I actually don't like the stone veneer, so I actually like the removal of that better, but I agree with Commissioner Pfaff. It then becomes very vertical, and those upper awnings do tend to break that up. So I agree with my fellow commissioners. Should I reopen the public hearing to see if the owner can go along with that? Yeah. I'd like to reopen the public hearing.
We're working on bringing him back in, so that might take a couple of seconds.
Thank you.
Hi, yes, okay, I will keep the awning in the front. That's okay for me.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think the commission quickly came to agreement that we're okay with removing the stone veneer. We're okay with removing the awnings at the back of the house, but we'd like to keep the lower and upper awnings in the front of the house. And the front door, we can defer to staff to make sure it's okay.
Sure, did you want me to share the door design here? Is there like a chat feature that I can just paste the link to Home Depot? Would that help?
No, you can share that with staff though,
With, how do I?
with your
just
planning.
Okay,
Your planner, yeah.
okay, with my planner, okay, sure.
Thank you. We can close the public hearing.
All right, thank you.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the project with the removal of the stone veneer in the front, and the awnings in the back, but leaving the 2 awnings on the top windows as is, and the bottom ones on the front. And that as per the front door, that he has staff check that.
And that is for the findings in the resolution.
As per the findings in the resolution as well.
Thank you.
I can second that. And
Great. We have a motion by Commissioner Camerado, a second by Commissioner Pfaff. Can I take a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camerata,
Aye.
Commissioner Pfaff,
aye.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
and Acting Chair Haran.
Aye. Great. So the motion passes 5-0-2-0. Let's see. To read my. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $900, which includes notice and costs. Congratulations.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Haran. Moves on to item 7B, 1450 Chapin Avenue. If you are the applicant and are attending the meeting via Zoom, please raise your hand so we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit this project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communication regarding this project? No, let the record note all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear the staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for a master sign program for a new sign above the first floor of a multi-tenant commercial building located at 1450 Chapin Avenue, and this is in the Chapin Avenue Commercial Zoning District. This application includes a new sign, approximately 10.3 square feet in area, that would be located on the second story of the existing multi-tenant commercial building. The proposed sign would be located on the side of the building facing the parking area, which is considered a secondary frontage. The proposed sign would be mounted under the roof canopy and would consist of internally facelit fabricated stainless steel letters with translucent vinyl. The sign would be very similar and match the existing signage at the front of the building. Master sign program is required for signs located above the first floor of a building in cases where regulations for upper signs are not specifically stated. A master sign program provides a means for a more flexible application of sign regulations for projects that require multiple signs and/or unique signs, such as placement above the first floor. Staff has provided in the resolutions the required findings for the master sign program, as well as 4 recommended conditions of approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for staff? Commissioner Say?
I just have a quick question out of curiosity. So I think it said that there's one signage per frontage. Is that correct? So there's one facing the street, facing Chapin. Now on the secondary frontage, we have this sign.
Correct.
So on the floor plan, it looks like is a 2-tenant floor. I don't know, maybe the rear connects to the main floor, so it's really only 1 tenant. But I was just curious, if there was a second tenant at the rear, would they not be able to add a sign if they were to desire one?
They would have to come in. It depends upon the placement of the sign. So if it was above the first floor, it would need to be part of the amended master sign program.
So it need to fall within like the square footage?
Correct. But if it's a code compliant sign, then they just get a building permit for the signage.
Oh, okay. But didn't it say somewhere here that there was just one sign per frontage or something like that?
No, there's a current sign at the front of the building that's a code compliant sign. The only trigger for this evening's action is that the proposed sign on the side is above the first floor, and the code doesn't allow signage above the first floor.
Okay.
I think to further clarify, the master sign program allows one upper floor signage per frontage. So if a tenant in the future wants to now put a second floor sign, that would probably require a master sign permit and probably a variance as well, because the master sign program does only allow for one upper
Okay,
floor
that's
sign.
what I thought I read. But
The intent was to reduce the number of upper floor signs in certain zoning districts.
it wouldn't necessarily preclude some other future tenant from trying to apply for a sign on the rear side if, I was just curious about that. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you would like to add about your project?
And if the applicant is online, may you please raise your hand? It does not look like the applicant is present.
Okay. Then we probably can't do any questions for applicant. But we can still keep the public hearing open. Do any members of the public attending wish to speak on this item? No? All right, then I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, can we move forward without an applicant? I think so. So, do you have any motions?
I'll make a motion that we approve the master sign program application per the staff report and
Findings in the resolution.
findings in the resolution.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Schmidt, seconded by Commissioner Haran. Can we have any discussion? No? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Pfaff,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Shores,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Haran,
Aye.
and Chair Lowenthal.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0-0-0. An action by the planning commission is appealable to the city council within 10 days of the planning commission's action. If the planning commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the city council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $900, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations. All right, moving on to agenda item number 8, study session. Item 8A, as we've said, has been continued. So we'll move on to item 8B, 737 Lexington Way. If you are the applicant, please, in attending the meeting via Zoom, please raise your hand so we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask you also turn your video on at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communication regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present at the project site. Can we hear staff report, please?
Yes, thank you. This is an application for major design review, variance for front setback, and special permit for first floor plate height for a new 2-story single-unit dwelling with an attached garage at 737 Lexington Way, zoned R1. The applicant is proposing to demolish the majority of the existing dwelling and attached garage and build a new 2-story single-unit dwelling with a 1-car attached garage. A portion of the structure would be used for an attached accessory dwelling unit, and the proposed floor area minus the ADU would be 2,699 square feet, where 2,701 square feet is the maximum allowed. The applicant is requesting a front setback variance for this application. The code requires a minimum front setback of 15 feet or the block average, whichever is greater. In this case, the block average is 14 feet 6 inches, so the minimum required front setback is 15 feet, and the applicant is proposing a front setback of 14 feet 1 inch. The applicant is also requesting a special permit for a 10-foot first floor plate height at the attached garage, where 9 feet is the maximum allowed. The total number of bedrooms would be 4, which requires 2 parking spaces, one of which must be covered, and that will be provided for in the attached garage, and 1 uncovered space is provided for in the driveway. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for staff?
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner.
Are we no longer receiving the special permit applications as part of our staff report to read?
I believe the attachments, when it comes back for action, we'll have findings for that.
Yes, sorry, Catherine, if I can add to that. So any variance applications, special permit applications, those are being reviewed by staff and will be included in helping us provide recommended findings for the conditions or for the design review approval, for the special permit, whatever it may be. But we are no longer attaching those to the staff report. So staff is really using those as tools in presenting the findings for the requests.
Okay, but we can't, so we'll just ask the applicant for their extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, if you have further clarifications, you can ask the applicant.
Okay.
Any other questions, staff? No? All right, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project?
Hi, Randy Grange, TRG Architects. So this is kind of a remodel and kind of a new house. It basically, it's a cool little street. We all love those 3 little streets down there. And I think what we've done here is it fits into that little neighborhood. It's not overwhelming or anything like that. I think the main things, there is a variance and a special permit application. The variance is just to keep the front wall where it is right now. In order to do the remodel, we have to take down the supports for the front porch and stuff like that, and to put them back in the same places where they were requires the variance. Every house along that block violates the 15-foot front setback. So it's just kind of the nature of the thing. And the other thing is that these lots, the three at the end there, are very unusual in that they're kind of reversed. They're very narrow. I mean, they're very shallow and they're wide, and they back up to the park there. So whereas your typical Burlingame lot is 50 feet wide by 100 or 120 feet deep, this thing is, I don't know what the width is, 70? It's a 70, it's square, it's like 70 feet deep and 70 feet wide. So you don't get much of a front or backyard in that situation anyway. I mean, the park is your backyard, but so that all we're doing is just keeping the same setback that we have. We don't have to throw the whole house away. We have the foundation out the front and the floor framing. We're trying to keep something. So, I mean, basically that's what that is, just to keep what's there. The special permit for the garage height, I mean, I think when the zoning code got rewritten, not everything was taken into consideration because 9 feet above the finished floor is, that's the house, that's the living space. But anytime you have an attached garage, you're going to step down into it, which automatically means you have to get a special permit to do that. I mean, the attached garage, any attached would require a special permit anyway, but in this case, because there's already one there, that wouldn't trigger this. It's just because you step down to the garage floor. Now it's more than 9 feet, and we want the eaves to line up because it makes the design, I mean, it'd be weird to drop the garage for no real reason. So, and then also, just one comment, the finished floor is a datum point, that's a level thing, but garage floor slopes back to front. So it's not really, I mean, you can't really say above finished floor of a garage because it varies. So the whole thing is a little weird. But anyway, that's all we're doing. We just want to match the eave line around the house, maintain the attached garage, and yeah, hopefully, and then we have an ADU in the back, but that's not part of this review anyway. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
I do.
Commissioner Pfaff?
Yeah. Hi, Randy. So we don't have paper plans anymore to look at. So I have to just ask the box arrangement that you have coming out of the bottom and the top, the wood or whatever it is, I don't know what you call those. They're like boxes where your windows are set in. You know what I mean? What are those called? Those
Bay window?
accoutrements. Yeah, the bay window. It's not really a bay, but yeah, that kind of thing. The arrangement you have on the bottom and top.
Uh-huh.
Right? It's only the two. How much depth do those have?
This thing's been in, I have to look. This thing's been in line for like
No depth.
It has no.
months. Yeah, it's just trim.
Oh, that's too bad. Okay.
We could poke them out. I mean, that would be
Think
cool.
Kind of flat, but oh well, that's a comment, not a.
But the one on the bottom, if I poke it out, then I'm increasing the non-conforming front setback.
You're going in the wrong direction.
If you want me to, I'd be happy to do it.
No, I'm just one.
And then the one upstairs, yeah, that bedroom, we could poke that out as a bay window. I think that's actually a really good comment. That would be kind of cool.
Okay, that was my curiosity, and I had contacted the planning department earlier to try to figure out, because we don't have these numbers anymore, what the actual current front setback was.
It's 14.1 and it will still be 14.1.
Yeah.
15 is the minimum, but the average on the block is like 14.5. So the whole street is this way.
Yeah, I noticed that the ends are, those are very unusual, short.
Right, right.
I noticed that, but would have been helpful to see that on here. So
I thought it was in a staff report because I just read it.
Yeah.
Well, whatever.
But its current one, is it on there? Also?
I have a question. How confident are you in saving the foundation? We had an applicant 2 weeks ago who ended up having to remove all the foundation, and then it became a
Well,
rebuild.
yeah, well, but it's being approved as a new house because we're taking down all the walls.
It would just change my view of the setback.
Oh, well, what's right there now that's one story is just staying one story. That's out of that setback. So any new loads coming down for a two-story work will be pushed back well within the setback limits. So it should not be an issue.
Okay.
And then the other thing is the porch. We have 3 porch columns coming in, right? There's a few porch columns right now.
Mhm.
So I don't see that as an issue at all.
Just maybe this is a comment for you, but also for the staff. The rendering is beautiful, but it looks like it's on an estate, right? And it's actually in quite a tight block. So to get a better sense of the relative scale, it would be great to have the neighbors shown as well.
Oh,
Because this looks like it's on a 1 acre,
Well-
property in the country. But it's actually quite a tight block. And it was a challenge for me to really kind of reconcile the two. Because the house actually in the rendering looks really big. And the block is really small. So that was it's just to get a better sense of what this is actually going to look like on the block. It also has 3 front gables that are quite tall. And most of the houses on that block have roofs going in the opposite direction, right? They're
what, hip roof?
so it's going to look pretty big, 14 foot 1 inch from the sidewalk, in my opinion.
I mean, okay. Well, anyway, we could add the neighboring house.
No. That's
Right,
more of a
rendering. I mean, on our left side of our house, we're just all one story and it's the second floor set way back. On the right side, we have a way more than required setback.
Yeah.
Like 11 feet. I'm looking for like 11 feet or something, and the setback is doesn't need to be anywhere close to that.
Okay.
So we're trying to be respectful of everyone down there. I know how tight that street is.
Yeah.
'Cause I live near there. I go down there all the time.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one more thing? I forgot, sorry. The porch that is currently there and this one, are they the same width? The depth,
The new porch is bigger,
you're
wider.
wider, but
wide.
not the depth, I mean.
No, it's the same.
Thank you.
I have one question. Randy, did you guys look at that window that is top floor, the second biggest, the other bigger window to kind of frame it like you did on that right-hand side? Did you play with that at all? I'm trying to create some depth there.
We could look at that.
Can you maybe just look at it and see what you think?
Uh-huh.
And just,
It's
not a make or break. I just kind of feel like it's kind of plain Jane on this left side where the right side is really.
right. I mean, sometimes too much of a good thing is too much.
Mhm.
And
The other,
Sometimes
other
it's
idea-
better to like make the one piece stand out and
Mm,
the other stuff
that's,
feed.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I
Right.
think maybe having that one piece over here on the right-hand side really stand out, like Commissioner Pfaff suggested, might be really nice.
Right.
Give
So
it,
if I did that on the
Oh.
left side, I would take, instead of 3 windows, I'd put 2 windows and then wrap it, but I can look at that. But,
why don't you just look at it? I was,
sure, I
I
have
just,
no problem doing that.
it's neither here or there.
Mhm.
Does that add square footage if you pop those out? It does, because you've only got 1 square foot left. I think
Well, I
that's
mean,
close, it's big.
it is what it is. I mean, the lot's not that big. It's, I mean, yeah, that's not that unusual.
But I think if it pops out and it makes it have more depth and it'll be a lot prettier,
Oh, the upstairs window?
yeah.
I was just
that
wondering about the,
Because it would just be a bay window, right?
yeah, oh, it doesn't add because it's exempt, right? Or,
Well, I'm not sure.
I don't know, I'm not actually,
It does, yeah. No, the only exemption I believe is for the bay window on the ground floor, you can extend a certain amount into the setback. So may not, well, you're still asking for a front setback variance, but maybe Amalia remembers. Do you know if it's exempt? It might be exempt from
Yes.
coverage.
The first floor bay windows are exempt from floor area and lot coverage and are allowed to project into the setback by 30 inches.
but that's only for first floor.
Right, so that
First floor.
upstairs has nothing to do with the setbacks or anything. It's just, it's way back there. But, well, it is at the 20-foot setback for the second floor. So I don't know if,
Right, yeah, the bay window exemption it only applies to the ground floor. So I could do something on the,
actually, it's really difficult because when you take this and the 70-foot wide lot and a deep lot, and then you take the 30 feet out for the setbacks and then push the second floor in, I mean, you're wiggling around in there. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I don't know if we could pop that. Well, we already have a variance for setback and we could throw that in.
But you don't on your square footage if it's counted.
Well, I can
second
take a couple
floor.
square feet out. I mean, that,
It's just, what? Isn't it? Isn't it?
if it really looked
Square foot.
better, that's fine.
right, they'd have to make up by taking other square footage out, as Randy mentioned. But also keep in mind that variances are, you have to make findings for hardship on the lot. So just keep that in mind. You can't base it necessarily on the fact that it looks better. It has to be a extraordinary circumstance on the property that doesn't apply to other properties in the vicinity. So just keep that in mind.
Couldn't it just be a decorative application, just as trim that won't add any square footage?
Well, that's what we have.
But it's.
But
Pokes out a
thicker,
few inches.
just thicker, like another inch or two,
Yeah, it pokes out a few inches. It's
Yeah.
trim.
but not change your floor plan.
Right. It doesn't, yeah. It does actually poke out a few inches.
Oh, it does in your proposed?
Yeah, I.
Well, I mean, it doesn't show on the plan
Oh,
because it's like a trim detail.
Mm.
it doesn't show on the elevations either, I don't think.
All right, do we have any other questions? All right, thank you very much. I'm going to ask the public if anyone attending in person wishes to speak on this item. No? Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, do we have any comments or motions?
I do.
Yes, sir.
I actually think that the applied trim is going to look fine. And, as long, come out a couple inches, you'll be great. I think what would help is for the next round is to just have the window detail with a section through those so that then we know it's there, it's there, and then building knows it's there for the go forward. But otherwise, I think it's a nice looking house for this location. It's a lot of house on a small lot, but that's what we're getting. And I think it takes full advantage of it. But it's not so close to the houses next door. So the wide lot really actually helps it quite a bit for not being side to side squashed. So I like the project and I think it'll be a good add.
I'd just like to briefly add, as of right now, the rendering and the elevations, make it look like that trim is completely, but I think just a couple inches is what it needs to get like a little bit of a shadow and depth. I do think that the other windows on the left, as opposed to just repeating the trim, I think like a small, like a decorative sill or maybe a lintel on that that set of 3 windows would add just a little bit of detail to that side, but it doesn't need to be repeated on all of the windows on that side. But I think that would help a lot. I don't think that the design needs really anything more than that.
Yeah, I like the project. I think the right elevation, A 3.2, just shows how flat the front is because there's no overhang on the eaves either. So I don't know if overhangs would be beneficial there or pragmatic, but it looks really flat as a result of having no overhangs.
Yeah, I really like the project. I think it looks really nice. It's going to be a nice add to the street and an improvement on the existing house. I don't disagree with my commissioner's comments. I think the front, maybe you take some of that rear trim detail that doesn't have the vertical siding, and you just use the trim detail somewhere on the front, whatever looks best, whether it be one of the lower windows or the upper windows. But it does feel like it's a little off balance. Or maybe you do it around the garage door. But that trim detail is really nice. And then as you go left, it kind of disappears. And then I was staring at the vertical siding that's on the front left of the upper floor, and I don't dislike it. I was just trying to figure it out, and it does travel all the way around which does make sense, but then you don't have any other vertical siding in the rear. I'm not going to see the rear very often, so it doesn't bother me. It was curious to me, but I do like the vertical siding to break up the stucco. Otherwise, I totally understand the ask for the raised plate height for the garage, and I totally understand the variance for the setback. So I'd be fine with both of those. Commissioner Say.
Yeah, I appreciate the explanation on the two, the variance and special permit applications. That made it very clear for me, the reasoning and the extenuating circumstances for the requests. Visiting the site, first looking at the drawings, I felt kind of the same reaction to the rendering, that it just seemed like a big open prairie and big lot. But applying the house to the site, I noticed that the site is actually quite open air. There's not a lot of big trees or anything that are closing in on the airspace around the property. So, and there are a few homes in the neighborhood with second stories. They don't have necessarily a Tudor style or pitched roof, but I think it would fit nicely. We've approved other projects in our city where a tall Tudor home is going in next to other smaller homes. So I don't really have an issue with it, especially since the property is quite an open air property. And I like that wide frontage, and I think it looks quite nice. The design is nicely put together, and I know that we'll summarize some of the comments for the next round.
Any other comments or motions?
Through the chair, also, if the motion maker can include the actionable items for the applicant to address when they come back, based on your discussion you've had.
Unless we send it to consent.
Even then, you would want to make sure, if you want to see
Actionable items.
yeah.
It sounds like we should probably come back to action. Or
Actionable items.
does anybody have any actionable items?
Just some,
I heard the trimmer on the windows is what.
some depth where possible.
Oh, detail.
Yeah, detail that it
Then it'd
just
be in the
looks
record.
really flat it's a big house. I think it needs a little depth.
Would you
Somehow.
present it to you, or are you okay looking at it through a consent?
For a consent,
Well, if it comes back to action, then we go through the whole presentation. Whereas
Yeah.
consent, you would have to pull it.
well, it's up to I'll go with whatever everyone else wants.
Maybe I'm just seeking feedback from my fellow commissioners on the lack of overhangs.
Yeah, that would help.
What are your thoughts?
Shadow or something, just,
Just that, that drawing A3.2 shows the front. Is that a problem? Does anyone have a concern about that in terms of an actionable item or no?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I
I
agree.
always like overhangs.
I agree.
Agree with you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So then we should bring it back.
Bring it back on action.
Action. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we bring it back on action and that we include details for the window trim and depth, as well as overhang for the gable ends, and approving the setback variance, the front setback variance, as well as the variance for the 10-foot height plate at the garage.
Can I add to there some context as well about the front setback? Because we don't really have minutes anymore, so the film is going to have to be it. I would normally not give a front setback on pretty much a new house, but in this case, it is a very unusual lot. It's very short, and it is pretty much what it is now. I checked that this afternoon. So for that reason, it's not like every other lot, because, you start doing that and then everybody asks for the same thing. So those 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, 4 houses on the end are have quite an unusual lots. I don't know that I've ever seen that. So for that reason, at least on my behalf, I don't know, you guys could have gone along with it maybe anyway, but I feel that that's sort of a hardship. I mean, it is a very large house, but it does limit the dimensions and from front to back. So.
And to add, did Chair Lowenthal wanted to add something about the siding? Is that one of the comments?
Not about the siding. It was more about the window detail in the front. So I think he's going to look at that. I'm okay with the way the house is right now. It wouldn't stop me from improving it, but I felt it was a little lopsided. That maybe there could be one more trim, but I don't think that's an actual
Oh,
item.
you're saying about this trim,
Well, you have the vertical siding, but then you have also in the rear of the house, just a nice trim detail around one of the windows, and maybe that gets brought to the front. Maybe he decides it doesn't look good. I'm okay with either, but something to look at. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Schmidt, second by Commissioner Camerado. With all those details, any discussion? Further discussion? No? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Pfaff,
aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Shores,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Haran,
Aye.
and Chair Lowenthal.
Aye. So that motion passes 7-0-0-0. And we'll see you back at action. Thank you. Okay, this brings us on to item 8C, discussion of the urban reforestation and tree protection ordinance. I don't think Community Development Director Nida is going to be.
No. I can just introduce Rich, please, as well. All right.
Thank you.
So let's see, in December of 2024, City Council adopted updates to the urban reforestation and tree protection ordinance. So that went into effect in the middle of January. The Planning Commission expressed a desire to hear from the City Arborist and Park Superintendent, Richard Holtz, just about an update to that ordinance and what the city is doing to get the word out to the property owners, residents, and developers. So Rich graciously accepted our invitation to come and share that with you, and I'll turn it over to Rich.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair Lowenthal and fellow planning commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to chat about what's been going on since the last time we all saw one another last May. See, we have a sold out crowd here. So, I really appreciate the opportunity. I want to go back to May 2024, where we got some great insight from you all as planning commissioners, as well as those members that were in the audience and provided public comment. We were able to incorporate some of those, or at least bring the concepts to the council level in October. And some were incorporated and some were not at the council's behest. And as Manager Huron said, that in December it was passed and it became part of our official municipal code on January 16th. While it was a lot of public outreach, 8 meetings over the course of a year, and we never get every single thing we want. We can't make everyone happy, but we do what we believe is best for our community, looking towards a sustainable urban forest for the next generation. So how do we go about implementing all of this stuff? If you go ahead and jump to the next slide, thank you. So we've, since January 16th, or actually prior to January 16th, we really started prepping some of our stakeholders. And those primary means are the e-news, the social media blasts. We updated our website on the park side that has a lot of the tree protection measures and talks about tree replacements. And then, of course, updated our brochures and handouts. This was a little bit of an easier lift on what we call replacement trees. So these are the trees that are required when a tree is removed, right? Whenever somebody gets a private protected tree removal permit. That is different than reforestation, and I'll revisit that subject of reforestation towards the end. Reforestation trees are required through development, basically based upon the size of the development, says how many trees need to go in. So just a quick recap. The ordinance expanded the protected trees that are included in the ordinance. It reduced the size slightly. That was really more a procedural or an admin cleanup. It did include city-owned trees, which we already had, but it was a different part of the ordinance. It was just clean to have one tree ordinance rather than 11.04 city trees and 11.06 private trees. But the big catch here was taking care of a loophole that existed. Trees have long been required as part of development or replacement. And once an applicant gets that final permit, they could literally just pluck it out of the ground and they're done. That did not fit the bill of what the intent of our replacement or reforestation trees are. So now as we go forward, whenever a tree is planted, regardless of size, if it was reforestation trees through development or replacement trees through the protected private tree removal permit, those trees become protected at time of planting. We have our asset management system that we can go forth, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a future slide. Also an increase of the size of the trees and the quantity that can be required on properties. You remove one large tree, that's a great contributor to community. There's no way we can plant, 100 trees on a parcel to replace that. But we want to look forward to the future generation of what can we sustainably do to help replace and ensure that there are tree benefits in this neighborhood. Tree protection measures have been memorialized through our ordinance, or at least the authorization to do so. Over the last couple of years, we've been modernizing the requirements that are required, that are in place when it comes to development applications, and we're continuing to refine those in accordance with modern arboriculture practices. Something kind of new and unique is this idea of a disclosure, real estate disclosure for protected trees at the time of sale. There's a later slide, I'll go into a little bit more depth on that. And then, of course, as we talk about, for those, unfortunately, this doesn't happen a lot, but for those who are intentionally wrongdoing, we do have the big stick that we can use if necessary. Next slide, please. So again, as mentioned, on the private protected tree removal permit side, we've had a lot of good documents that were basically just updated. This helps the user, rather than having to go through a 20-page municipal ordinance. It's kind of the cheat sheet on, this is what to expect through the process. This is why we require additional information in certain situations, so that the applicant is well aware of what the process is like. So on this side, we went ahead and updated our permit online. That is live and ready. We have our protected tree disclosure form. Again, that real estate transaction I'll go into in a moment. And then this cool brochure that we really updated, which is the next slide, please. We used to have this old kind of trifold brochure, and someone much more creative than I was able to take the concepts and make this a little bit more palatable. This is kind of a one-stop shop for anyone who has any questions of trees in Burlingame, street trees, private trees, how to take care of a newly planted tree in front of your house. These are obviously available at the counter for us. It's available on our website, but we push this out to anyone who has tree questions, and hope that it is a great starting point of asking questions, but also recognizing the benefit of why Burlingame values its urban forest. Next slide, please.
Before you go to the next slide?
Yes.
Can I point out that you have a 44-inch diameter tree instead of a 44-inch circumference?
Thank you for pointing that out. Yes. Someone more creative than I, but I did not catch that myself. So thank you very much for pointing that out. I guess I'm going to do a black Sharpie on 500 of these brochures. But thank you for pointing that out. That is
On the
important.
counter,
Yeah.
laying around.
I think the word says circumference, but the pictogram does not
Yeah.
depict a circumference. So I appreciate you pointing that out.
Some of us don't read the words and only look at the picture.
No worries. Yeah. So we have this 2-page real estate disclosure. It's available on our website. And I really want to give a shout out to our local Compass brokerage firm. They've really taken it and ran with it and actually helped us massage our way into the beginnings of this. Their real estate agents and their admin group have been very good at working through that. And this is new to the city. So we're trying to refine our process and make it smooth for everyone. But basically, within 7 days of the sale, the seller of the property must disclose to the purchaser or the transferee that what the protected trees are on the property. And we have 4 categories. Category 1 would be our street trees. And there is a website, a public-facing website, where anyone can click on it. You can just zoom into your property and you can see the green dots. If the green dots are there, you click on it, it tells you that it is a city-owned tree. The second category is obvious. That's the 44-inch circumference, where a property owner would measure around the tree in order to determine that. The third category is the new category. That was that catch-all, these trees that are required for replacement or reforestation. And, this could have happened 10 years ago and the tree is not yet 44 inches in circumference. How are we going to document these. So we have an asset management system that we utilize. And right now there are 0 trees in this database because it starts January 16th moving forward, right? We're not going back 30 years ago looking at permits. This is starting now. Any new development application received after January 16th or any new private protected tree permit after January 16th, those replacement trees will then become protected and we will be managing those. In that instance, right now, we do not have a forward-facing website yet for the public, so they would need to call in and we can do a quick database search. I said it's a very small database right now, 0, but we anticipate that growing over the years. Want to make that as smooth as possible where folks aren't needing to call into the city, that they'd be able to research that data themselves. And then the 4th category would be trees that we're growing in an easement. As you all know, we have a lot of utility easements. And these are typically treated by the city as privately owned trees. And I know there's still a lot of questions and confusion about that in the community, and we do our best to explain, whose those trees belong to. But the bottom line is if it's that protected size, then it would also need to be disclosed as well. Next slide, please.
Can I go back for just a second?
Mhm.
So thank you so much for all your help.
Sure.
I know I've called you on a,
No problem.
will be calling you in the future. But one of my concerns, and I think you and I talked about this a little bit, was the 7 days prior to the close of escrow for these trees. And I think the problem as an agent is that if you have a new disclosure for a buyer, and you now provide this document to a buyer within 7 days of close, they can actually possibly back out of the transaction. So I'm wondering if we can do this up front prior as part of our disclosure packet when typically, well, how I do it is I have a disclosure packet. I might add some things before the offers are due, but at least have it in the disclosure packet right from the beginning so that the buyers know what they're getting themselves into.
That's a great idea.
So that's kind of my biggest concern about this is because, we're putting kind of an undue burden possibly on the owners who may not really understand this. And I'm wondering if we can kind of look at this, and I know we're kind of still massaging this, but if you can kind of maybe do it prior to the house going on the market even.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Camarado. So I have had that conversation with several real estate agents. I mean, the idea would be to get this information out at the time of the listing, so everything's out there. We have been working with SAMCAR, the San Mateo County Association of Realtors, and we will be presenting at one of their future meetings in order to get all this information out. And we will also be directly reaching out to each brokerage firm and encouraging agents to just get this information up front. Right now we're not being the police with this. We're just trying to, like I said, massage our way into this and understand. This was heavily borrowed from the city of San Jose. It's what their disclosure is. I'm not aware of any other local city that requires a real estate disclosure at the time of sale, but this was something that was a council suggestion, taking up some of the public comments that were received, and very much appreciate your suggestion. But I think a lot of that rests honestly with me and reaching out directly to these groups. We have been engaged with SAMCAR through the process, but as you know, as a member of that, sometimes information didn't trickle down as well as it should have. So we've got connected with the correct committee chairs there, and we will be more actively involved with sharing that information.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can I also piggyback on Commissioner Camarado? I actually think that's really smart. Was there a part of that? I remember looking through the drafts, and there was something I didn't understand. I don't know if it made it to the end regarding also reporting what trees your neighbors had. Was that still in there, or is it just a street tree?
So that's a little bit later,
Oh.
and that has to do with a development disclosure, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But with the real estate disclosure, only the trees that belong to that address.
Good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is just an example of what the forward-facing website is for street trees. You just kind of zoom in, you find the address, click on the green dot, and the highlighted information comes up. Next slide, please. So reforestation, like I said, we're on pretty good grounds with the replacement trees because we've done that in the Parks and Rec department for a very long time. Where our city has not done as great a job with is trees and development. And that's on multiple accounts, communicating with the applicants or the developers. Fortunately, our neighbors to the south in San Mateo have done a very good job. And they are allowing us to heavily borrow some of their concepts and graphics. And that will be forthcoming. I'll share a couple. Well, you saw in the staff report some very, very rough drafts. Nobody wants to look at a 10-page guideline that needs to be pared down more like we have our tree brochure. So it's a little bit more graphically appealing and concise. You can get right to the information you need. So we'll be working on some of these concepts, like with the tree protection brochure. We'll have a whole separate web page dedicated to trees and construction. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for anyone involved with the development application to understand that trees do need to be prioritized as part of the process. I'm going to put an asterisk there, and we'll talk a little bit more about exceptions to that towards the end here. And then obviously just updating some of our brochures and handouts. Next slide, please. So this is the disclosure statement. Again, heavily borrowed and not a great image there, but there was an example of it in the staff report. Whereby anyone who's putting in a development application will get this disclosure statement, and they will fill it out to the best of their ability, and that will help us determine whether the city arborist or the contract arborist that's doing parks reviews for applications will even need to take a look at things. Sometimes there are some development applications that come through, you think like, well, geez, what does this have to do with trees? They're just putting in a deck, but how close is the deck to that protected tree? Then there's other ones that seem like they're a whole bunch, but it's all interior work that's going on. So we want to be mindful right at the outset, so that way any applicant understands to what degree they're going to need to have a potentially a project arborist or tree reporting or a tree protection plan, those types of things. This is, again, a very rough draft that was heavily borrowed from San Mateo. We will massage through and certainly work with our partners in community development on what works for them in terms of identifying. The little image on the left, that was that category 3 I was talking about in terms of the newly planted protected trees. Those are just 2 examples we have in our inventory right now because it is 0 at this point. Next slide, please.
Yep.
Yeah,
Where you go?
absolutely.
I'm struggling with the previous reforestation and replacement requirements. Are you going to have more language that clarifies which those trees are? Because right now, I'm not following.
Okay, so
And I'm just thinking if I had to fill out this application, I would be stuck right there.
sure. We can certainly work on clarifying those in terms of what the differences are. The bottom line is when it comes to that category 3, either way, they would be treated the same. But I understand the point of clarifying for the public, what is a replacement tree and what's a reforestation tree? And perhaps some of the documents we're going to take a look at here, when you look at the actual charts, that will explain things a little bit differently.
Okay.
Yep. Next slide, please.
Sorry, I had a quick.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Would development applications apply to single-family homes?
hmm Everything,
Okay.
including ADUs.
All right. So what's it, unless there's an audit, what's to prevent someone from lying and fill out this tree disclosure statement when no trees exist?
That is a fair point. And I can tell you the city of San Mateo, at the bottom of their disclosure form, it has the penalties listed there. I am not the legal expert there. I'll have to rely on our own legal team in order to determine what language we can put there. But there can be penalty for falsely filling out the form. It is never something that we never, similar to yourselves, you take a look at applications. You have to do your due diligence. I heard tonight that you need to go by. Did anyone go by this address? We do the same thing. Sometimes it will be electronically, right, via satellite images or a street map or something like that. But we do our own due diligence. We don't just take a look at this, oh, they don't have any trees, check, move on. Because sometimes people get it wrong. Oh, I thought it was on the neighbor's property. I didn't realize where the property line is. So you bring up a fair point about that, and that's an asterisk I have in my own mind that I need to communicate with our legal team and determine what is appropriate, if anything, to put there.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Also, in that same vein, what is to keep someone from looking at this and going, oh, I think I'll just take out some before I have to fill this out?
So to be fair, anyone can remove a non-protected tree at any time without the need for permission. That's the way it has existed. That's the way it exists now. Could somebody in advance of a development application, say they had 10 healthy, non-protected size trees, remove them? Absolutely, they could. I think it would be obvious, and as part of the design review, when we look at the reforestation requirement, which we'll go into in a moment, you can kind of look, well, wait a minute, there were trees here, you remove the trees, but there's nothing that gives us the authority to do anything about that. Now, if you're talking a protected tree, and they fill out a protected tree permit, they are supposed to fill out a portion of that. Do you have any development plans for this, and so on and so forth? Trees are lawfully allowed to be removed for reasonable development under our old code and our current code, and there's no problem with that. We just need to go through the process. If somebody's, and we've gotten a lot of these recently, I don't want to get in the weeds here about the private protected tree removals, but we're all aware, and I was actually first made strongly aware here at our May meeting when we heard from property owners about insurance companies canceling property insurance or the difficulty in getting insurance. We get several of these calls a week. Most of them don't amount to anything because through pruning or different practices, there are some mitigating measures, but there are some that aren't. And that is a factor that we can consider when it comes to tree removal. But we do our due diligence. We talk to the insurance companies. We want to see the actual documentation, not just somebody's word for it. And usually when I say I need to see something, I never hear back from that person. So it's a balanced approach. I really am proud of the work that we do, and I think we do a good job of balancing everybody's needs here. Okay, next slide, please. So tree protection measures, again, we'll have some great guidelines. These are all pictures from San Mateo. Thank you, San Mateo. But to really give someone that visual impact, this is what is expected. Unfortunately, it's never a one-size-fits-all solution. You could have a tree that's overhanging the house. Well, you can't protect that whole area. How are you going to get in there and do the construction? So a lot of times we'll require a project arborist to just kind of write up a report. Hey, how can they manage and mitigate this? If it's smaller trees or city street trees, we will work with them and advise them as best we can. But a lot of times there is a requirement for significant trees to get a project arborist involved, especially because in the last several years, we've heard a lot of concerns from neighbors who have very large roots are conceivably encroaching the area. And I think our planning and building team have done a really good job, and a lot of our developers at modifying some designs, even some foundation designs, in order to accommodate some of those challenges. Next slide. So this is not sexy, but this is really the three charts that are the most important. And it comes down to the replacement and reforestation. So I understand, Commissioner Schmidt, your concern about what's the difference. And I think we need to massage that out a little bit when we're talking about the reforestation trees. That's based upon, in the code, it's really spelled out very clearly. But in the documents that we need to provide, we need to have something that's very concise that explains what a reforestation tree is. In the example that I think was provided in the staff report, it starts out with some definitions. Again, heavily borrowed from San Mateo. It needs to be tailored to Burlingame's needs, and having a reforestation definition is something we can easily do as part of that. Next slide, please. Next slide, one more. There we go, perfect. So these aren't new slides. They're just slightly different than what you saw in May. The council did not like categories and options, and especially the larger trees. I know that can be concerning for some neighbors when they see a large tree that's removed. I want a large tree to go back in. Studies show time and time again that smaller trees actually naturalize and have a better likelihood of survival and of thriving. This is still an increased requirement from what we had, but there are some options in there. There's also in our code the ability to incentivize native plantings. That would be a reduced planting because native trees tend to live longer and be more sustainable in our community. Next slide, please. And then again, we talk about the reforestation, talking about if we're speaking about residences, habitable space. I want to be clear, this does not include ADUs, accessory dwelling units, or anything that is ministerially required. Did I say that correctly, Miss? Okay. We had a long conversation about this. You know, the state is very clear on what we can and can't do. We don't want to do anything that really precludes building of these types of structures. So reforestation requirements will not apply to ADUs. However, replacement requirements will. So let me explain that. If somebody has a tree in their backyard that is protected size, and they are planning on building an ADU where that tree is, they can lawfully have that tree removed. However, they will need to replace that tree. And that can be through a combination of an in lieu fee based upon size, or if they choose to replace on the property, which is honestly what our community wants. We want to see trees planted. We don't necessarily just want the money to plant somewhere else. So we will be working that out, but we can't say, oh, well, you just added another 1,000 square feet of habitable space on the property. Now you have to plant an additional tree. That is not something we are looking at. That square footage cannot be counted towards that total. Question?
So let's say there's a big redwood tree in the back and they're going to take it out because they're going to build this 800 square foot ADU 2-story now. But there's additional space in the yard where they can put another tree, but maybe not a redwood tree, but maybe 3 maple trees or 2 maple trees. Is that what you're talking about, like an in lieu fee, or is it more more substantial than that?
So and please interrupt me if I'm speaking incorrectly. As part of the municipal code update that occurred, we also had a fee schedule that was approved, and it's a kind of a per inch fee, right? So let's just say this tree is 100 inches in diameter and the fee is $300. So 100 times $300 is what the in lieu fee could be. I don't know. I think most people would say, hey, I'd rather just plant a tree on the property than pay $30,000. We do have the ability to require additional trees based upon the size or specific trees. I don't think we'd recommend a redwood, so close to a home. We would want to encourage an applicant to look at their design and see if there's a way to salvage a tree, but we cannot force that, especially in the ADU situation. There's a specific timeline that we have to be responsive to, and that's something that our staff, myself, or the contract arborist would speak with the applicant, perhaps the planner, and say, is there any massaging here? Is there room to adjust? And if the answer is like, nope, this is what we want, and that's the way it gets left, and we move forward with the calculation. And we haven't encountered this yet, but it will likely be an either or. Hey, here's the fee that you can pay, or you can plant X amount of trees. And my gut is going to be most people are going to choose the trees because it will be less expensive than paying for the in lieu.
And you guys will be determining the amount of trees.
Yeah. So I mean, really, it looks at the. If we could go back one slide, it really is based upon the replacement here, right? So let's just say you use redwood, right? So let's just say it's over 45 inches. They can plant 2 36-inch box trees or 3 24-inch box trees, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be on that property. That's what our goal will be. And we have the rights to requirements so long as there's space, reasonable space. It could be off-site, another location. We have, again, this is new. These are modern concepts that we're trying to incorporate to our community. You all know better than I that very built out. These are small lots and the houses are getting bigger and, you know, space is getting limited. And irony is the bigger the property gets, the more trees that are required. So, you know, we really have a lot of tools through this ordinance. And again, we have great partnership with community development in finding what a reasonable solution is for our applicants.
I have one other question. Have you guys looked at some of the trees that are on residential properties that are super huge in our area? And have you spoken to those property owners? Like, there's a couple trees in the Easton Addition Burlingame Park area that the trees are just really big, like bigger than the house themselves.
Yeah, so I mean, just because a tree's large doesn't mean it's necessarily at a greater risk. Generally, though, I think we'd all agree, the larger the tree, the greater the consequence if something would happen. The city does not actively look for these trees. If our staff or we get a citizen complaint that they're concerned, we might take a quick look and advise the owner of what that concern is. Put them on notice. Hey, just heads up, city got a complaint. You have a dead tree in your backyard. You should do something about it. Now, in my example I just used, we actually do have means through our code enforcement to say, hey, now you have a hazardous situation. You need to do something about it. And that has been utilized. But simply having a large tree that perhaps hasn't received the maintenance that we might have given on our own trees, we generally don't look for that. If there is concern brought to us, we certainly communicate that concern.
Okay.
We do see a lot of private tree issues of neighbors who are concerned and not wanting to talk to their neighbors. So we end up being kind of that, hey, just a heads up, your neighbors are concerned. If there's anything specific, the city does have the ability for conflict resolution, referring people to that. In my time here, I'm not aware of anyone taking advantage of that. Unfortunately, we get some nuisance appeals that occur at the beautification level. And we're really trying to cut down on that because it's a waste of everyone's time. If people would just communicate and talk with one another, they better resolve they would likely find.
One other question. Actually, I was walking around yesterday and noticed that some of the city trees, there are some city trees that are in that breezeway between the sidewalk and the street. And some trees have ivy that's wrapped all around it. How is this? Have you guys kind of established what trees those are, and are you kind of looking for that to try to help the owners kind of get that clean?
Yes-ish. We had a complete inventory in 2012, which I know seems really old, but most of the trees that were there in 2012 are still here, fortunately for our community. If it was marked with ivy then, it's still on there in the notes. Our tree contractor goes through once every 4 years and it gets noted there. We really try to work with the residents because, you know, I know we think of sidewalks and we call it the planter strip between the curb and the sidewalk as city property. It is not city property. This is our right of way to do public improvements like sidewalks, curbs, and trees. But we don't go pulling weeds or planting other things in front of people's houses. That is their responsibility to the street, is to keep things weed-free and nuisance-free. So there is an ability in the code that we can reach out to people and say, hey, you need to take care of this.
Yeah, but if it's impacting the trees and then we end up having to pay for a tree to be replaced because that tree dies, then.
Yeah, I will tell you what typically happens. Neglect. Once every 4 years, we're going through and we are stripping the bottom and the ivy just dies at the top and it looks ugly. But that's what the property owner is going to deal with if they're not going to take care of those nuisance.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question related to the explanation about the ADU. And Commissioner Schmidt.
Can we go one slide forward? Thank you.
Yeah, the difference and such. So let's use your example and let's say, so an ADU happens, they opt to take whatever tree it is out, which they're allowed to do, and they think, okay, we'll put 2 in or whatever. Are you saying those are all also protected as well?
Any tree that gets planted, whether it's a replacement requirement, in this situation, this is a replacement requirement, is protected at the time of planting.
Okay.
That is correct.
Thank you.
But then isn't also the 2 or 3 trees per lot based on the 1,000 square foot, are those also protected?
Yes, the reforestation trees would be protected if they were required as part of the planting. We do have some situations where we get development applications and there are trees on the property and folks are like, hey, I already have these smaller trees and they aren't protected right now. They would become protected at that point. Okay, if you agree, you want these 3 to count towards that total, again, not ADUs, right? Those would then be protected. Those would be the reforestation trees that they are satisfying through existing trees on the property.
So then go forward, you'll be looking at applications and then saying these 3 trees are the protected trees, and that'll go into your database.
Correct.
I think that's actually a really good addition because something that's already on site, no matter what the tree is, I mean, if it's, healthy enough and it's just been, I think, really sad when they just strip something and start, completely empty, where that's a motivation for a lot of reasons to keep some stuff that you got. I think that was a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, we've really tried to incorporate and find a balance. What is the intent?
Right.
And, how can applicants satisfy it? And there's some options there to get to the point where we need to be. I don't want to call it a specific address, but I will say there's, property at Hillside Circle. It's been a little problematic where over the years, it's a very large parcel, but, the trees aren't protected size. And little by little, and pretty soon you go by and it's just barren out there. It's really unfortunate.
What if you're impacted? What if your parcel, what if your neighbor has such a huge tree that it's coming over onto your parcel and you want to build an ADU and now you can't really build an ADU because if you build an ADU, you're really impacting that tree and it's a protected tree on somebody else's parcel.
So sounds like somebody's going to conflict resolution or court. No, in reality, so the basic rule when it comes to private trees that are overhanging your property, you have the right to cut the tree right up to the property line, up to 25% of the tree, so long as you don't cause the tree to destabilize or die, right? So you wouldn't want, I'm mad one day, I'm going to go out there and just hack at this tree. You'd want to hire a professional. You'd communicate with your neighbor and say, hey, I'm concerned about X, Y, or Z. If the neighbor's like, no, I don't want you touching that tree, they can't stop you. Now, could they have a claim against you if the tree destabilized or died? Absolutely. Your actions caused that. So these are private issues. It gets very sensitive. I think our legal team would say, Rich, stay out of it. But we are a service agency here, and sometimes by having these conversations, we can help people resolve whatever the issues are. I think the bigger question would be, what if it was a root impact? These roots are coming over. And I've seen some very creative solutions for applicants to get their projects through and get their neighbors on board by doing some modifications to foundations, which is very expensive on the applicant's part, but it was a way for them to potentially avoid an appeal and get things through the way it needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that my mom was on Paloma and the neighbor had 4 redwood trees in the back right corner. And those roots literally came to her backyard and have uplifted the entire concrete slabs.
Yeah.
So, unless I go in there and I kind of have to cut around those trees. Now, I sent them a letter. They ultimately trimmed those trees and did a lot of work on the trees for us, which was great.
Yeah, I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but
Saying, these trees are impactful to
Yep.
just my house, but probably those other 3 houses that are.
we have seen neighbors collaborate on tree removals where a cost is shared because it's been a nuisance, but we've also seen neighbors sharing the expense in maintaining the trees because of the benefits that they create, right? So I will stand here and tell you that redwood trees are some of my favorite trees, and these trees that were planted in backyards are probably really cool in the 40s and 60s, but at this point, sometimes they're 10 feet from a structure. I live with a redwood tree 10 feet from my structure. I love it. I'm willing to tolerate it. I think Commissioner Pfaff does too, but that's not everybody. And that's part of property rights and finding the balance and, recognizing what the value is to our community. So, yeah.
But for me, I see all of this as save trees, but not necessarily manage. And to me, what has happened along El Camino, I loved the trees when I first moved here, but over the years, I've realized they've really done a significant amount of damage.
Mm-hmm.
And we fought that. for years. And we've prolonged this
We've
because we don't have a policy that then encourages smart use of the trees versus just keep all of the trees.
We fought it though because they were going to widen the whole El Camino and we would have no trees. So it's not quite as that simple. But going forward, I mean, we have, I think, finally worked out something, which is great. And yeah, it's unfortunate as an agency and we didn't have, good communication for decades. So
Yeah, our community has a very storied past with trees. Through my research of our tree ordinance and the origins, and you might have heard me say this, right? Our city was incorporated in June of 1909 and 1908. And by September, we already passed our first tree ordinance at saving the trees along El Camino, right? So, someone sent me an article recently here from the 1970s and it was, El Camino eucalyptus trees, love them, hate them. This is going on for a long time. I think we're all of the mindset of sustainability, right? We don't want to create problems for the future. Some of these tree choices, and I use my example of planting a redwood, 10 feet from the house was cool back then. Now it's like, oh man, why didn't you plant it 30 feet away? Then we could enjoy this tree longer without having problems, or pick a different tree. So the modern arboriculture standard is right tree, right place. We're having this conversation right now at the Beautification Commission with themed blocks and trees that are large structured trees but have conflict with utilities. That's a problem. That's something that City Council wanted us to look at, and we're looking at it. And whether something changes or it's the same, we'll have that conversation as it approaches here. To your point about do you have to have a tree all the time? The answer is no. It's site specific. And that's what's so tough about these ordinances is it's not black and white. You all know every single property is slightly different. And when we go out there, we have to approach the neighborhood. One of the factors we have to look at is how impactful is the removal of this tree to the neighborhood, right? It kind of sucks if you're the last redwood tree in the neighborhood because that's going to be really impactful. But if there's 10 of them, one of them is the neighborhood might be able to tolerate it a little bit more. But I think we did a really good job as a community to come together and create a lot of options in order to satisfy tree replacements through the community. Maybe not on site, maybe it's planted off site. So with that, I think we've been doing questions all the way through, but happy to take more questions now, or if you'd like me to come back at a later date and talk about something else, see how we massage through this.
I still have my question about adjacent neighbors. So was that covered in this?
I didn't go line for line, but in that disclosure form, the development disclosure, right there. You can't read that little writing there, I'm sorry, but
Okay.
There should be a line there. Are there significant trees within 30 feet of your property line?
That would,
Right.
so, okay, so I have a couple of questions. So on that one, that is so people know, oh yeah, there's a big something that, just so they're aware, this is not actually the real estate one.
No,
Just-
no, this is a development disclosure.
Okay.
Yep.
Actually, then I have a question and a request. So I noticed this before, and I guess it's just a, FYI, there are things there, and maybe be careful the way you place things when you're developing. That would be the good side of it. The part I'm a little concerned about is, well, it's two things. When we get and they're all different because everybody uses different architects. When we get the landscape plans, a lot of times, well, sometimes there's a whole tree report, a professional tree report. Sometimes it's just, I think, in-house. How many trees are on the property or around it. And I find it really confusing the way they're laid out. It would be great to have a standardized form. It's hard when, especially now, we don't have plans, to see paper plans. So we're dealing in very small, they're harder to see. And so there might be, 2 street trees, but it takes you a while to figure out, oh, it's a street tree. It looks like there are, 12 trees, but when you actually look at the thing carefully, it says, oh, this is a neighbor's tree, and this is, this is the state of the neighbor's tree, and this is the street tree, and when, you know, they may have like only one tree on the lot, and it is what it is, but it would be really easier for us to read, for me anyway, to assess, oh, you know, if we're only going to approve one tree or whatever, or they're only required to have one tree because this neighbor has this other tree, if that's supposed to be considered, the other neighbor can also take the tree out. Then that whole development looks a lot different. So for me, at least, I would really appreciate a little more standardization, I guess, when things come into the planning department, if it's a form or whatever, that when they're assessing, it's not that it's not useful, it is useful to know that there's a street tree and there's the neighbor's trees, but it would be great to know, to have it easier to read, color-coded or something like, these ones in green, these are the ones that actually are on this property, and these are street trees, and these belong to somebody else. It's just, it's very confusing for me to, and they're all different. We get them and I have to read them 5 times, like how many trees are actually on this site? Because that's really all you can count, I think. You have no guarantee that any of the properties around there are going to always have the trees for a variety of reasons. So it just was a request. And the other thing is the purpose for this then, so in a bad state way, that someone could force a tree to be removed or something from an adjacent property. So why is the adjacent thing on here?
Because you may have tree protection measures. Like, I don't have any
I
on my property, I don't have to worry about it. But if it
Got it.
attacks a neighbor's tree, that
Because of the roots.
needs to be
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can never force someone else to remove their tree. That would be a private litigation thing,
Right.
right? If somebody, oh, your tree's dropping leaves and clogging my gutters all the time.
Yeah.
City, what are you gonna do about it? Nothing. You guys work that out. You want to figure that out some way, that's on you.
Okay.
So,
That helps me on that.
yeah, so I mean, I'm not aware of any type of standardized form from another agency. It doesn't mean we can't do that. I'm proud to be part of a group that we haven't even had our first meeting yet. We have a Peninsula Arborists. We're going to get together. They're from municipalities and different government agencies, and I will ask that question if anyone has a standardized form. What's beautiful about this ordinance is we have the ability to create whatever we want. It is a lot of work, so it's nothing that's going to happen overnight, but it could be something that we work towards.
I don't want to make it's not a make work project. I definitely not my intent. Even if it's just, you could put the ones that belong on the property in bold, like ask the architect or whoever's doing the submission. The ones in bold, like bold, those are the trees that are actually on this property. Just something simple so that it pops out like, okay, there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you.
I think on that point, I think there are trees that are half on one lot and half on the other.
Oh, that's true.
And I think that would be really good if we could get, when these projects come before us, to have clarification and keep kind of a record of those trees. Because I've done a couple of developments and that's come up as an issue because the neighbor then says, I don't want to remove the tree. So then you're kind of jogging a fence around that tree. But it doesn't matter. I mean, just, trying to make sure that we understand which trees are on the property line.
Yep.
When they do surveys, normally
yes,
they would
they
be
have
doing a
survey, right.
survey, I would guess they're doing surveys, and then they're supposed to know. Yeah, because remember that one at beautifications the other day, totally they didn't know where the property line was, which was really weird. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And then the tree fell down 8 days later.
did it really?
Mhm.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's interesting. Wonder if that was an accident.
No, it was.
Quick little question.
Yeah.
In the resolution on the master fee schedule, it says for the part where the arborist is involved, arborist plan review for landscaping requirements on planning applications. And then it says residential and it says commercial. And it says each, and then there's a fee. Each tree, each application,
Yes. Application.
each application.
So I can tell you, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Did I answer the question? Because I have a little
The
more.
same thing for the permit submittals, and it just said each. Everything else was kind of defined by something, an hour or a tree or whatever, and I just was curious.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for our friends in community development, but at present, we're looking at our master fee schedule, and that's actually going to move towards an hourly fee as opposed to an application, because we have some applicants that are very quick. They get everything there. First go, we are ready. And then we have others where we're going back 3, 4, 5, 7 times. And that's a lot of staff time. Commercial applications are cost more because and it will be an hourly fee for the commercial as well. They just take a lot more time, sometimes days just to get the final out there because there's hundreds of trees that need to be checked. But that's a good clarifying question. I think our city is trying to remain a little bit more financially solvent and recoup certain actual staff time costs. And then there's certain things we say, hey, this is a public service and we're okay subsidizing that. But I think with development applications, it's something where we do want to recoup the actual staff time for that personal benefit.
Yeah, I think that would be a nice change.
Yep.
It didn't seem like the difference for residential commercial was very much.
Yeah.
There's so many more trees on a commercial development.
Yep.
Just a naive question. Does the ordinance apply to government agencies as well? So the school districts, the city,
Good.
Caltrans?
Great question. Does not apply, and please, Manager Heron, correct me, but school districts fall under the state. I don't believe we have any jurisdiction. Let's use PG&E, our buddies over there. It's more of a courtesy through the state PUC. They do not have to follow, get our permission, apply for a permit. We try to maintain some good relationships and communicate, especially so we can notify our public. But it does not apply to those agencies that have greater jurisdiction than we do.
How about the creeks?
Creeks are generally private. So unless there's an issue that could impede the flow of water through a city-maintained culvert, the city doesn't get involved. And we have actually Public Works has a document.
But aren't the creeks fish and game?
So there's a number of, if you're talking about permits to work in the creek, that
Or no, just the trees. So like I was telling you, I have a property that's coming up and it's on the creek.
So let's just say you had a big tree in the creek, you would get a private protected tree from us. But the city is not saying, where's your permit from Fish and Game? If you feel like you're going to do something to affect the waterway, that's someone else needs to investigate that.
So El Camino, right? I'm not 100% whether the city owns that and the state administers it or the state owns that, right? So would these apply to the trees on El Camino?
So the answer is legal team. If you read our ordinance, we do require of other agencies in our ordinance. Do we have jurisdiction to do so? In my opinion, no. I'm not a legal person, though.
I can answer that one because they're listed in the National Register and the replacements will be listed in the National Register. Anything that is on it's Caltrans, and there's a big right-of-way setback. They deal with encroachment permits, and it's always been that way. And I don't think that will change. As far as beyond the right-of-way, that's for us in our property.
Encroachment permits from Public Works?
I think Public Works and Planning is the way it has worked. So if, let's say there's a property in El Camino, let's just say whether there's a new tree there, an old tree, they're all going to be counted the same. It will be the same as what you're talking about, actually. And they want to change the driveway or something is going to change there. And trees are going to be moved around or removed. So that all goes through, it will go through our planning department, but it will also have to go through Caltrans because it's their protected tree. And so it will be just like it's always been.
But that doesn't go through our department.
Okay.
No,
Wouldn't
no,
involve any-
that's what
Okay.
no, you don't.
We'd get a lot of in lieu fees if for every eucalyptus they take down.
Yeah.
I had a question about protected trees. So if a protected tree dies, at what point is that supposed to be rectified? Like what if it's a financial hardship for the homeowner?
So let's take it a couple different ways. If you're talking a mature tree, a big tree that would potentially be a hazard, then that's their liability, and how that gets rectified, that'd be through code enforcement. I believe we have means in our municipal code. If somebody wasn't doing anything about it, we could actually do the work, hire a company, and then back bill the property owner, however that's done on the tax roll, or putting a lien on the property or something that way. If we're talking, let's say somebody plants a tree, a replacement tree, and it dies, are they supposed to replace it? I believe, and I know former Assistant City Attorney Spansale worked very hard on this. There was language that if it occurred within the first 5 years, the idea was that, you needed to replace the tree. How that was determined the first 5 years, I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to go back and look at the ordinance language because I can't recall offhand. But what we were looking at is, within 5 years that you have a duty to keep that tree healthy and going.
But that still offers a pretty big loophole. So if I build a brand new property and I'm required to have 3 reforestation trees, what's stopping me from getting my sign off? And then those trees died
5 years later?
Well, no, right away.
Well, you would be required to replace them.
By who?
By our ordinance. So I believe it's listed in our ordinance that within the first 5 years, you are required to
get a letter saying, hey, one of these trees is dead. You didn't replace it. Here's your fine.
So we're not we're not going around inspecting this, but let's just say a neighbor was upset. They were supposed to plant 3 trees in the backyard and I know they killed them on purpose. We go to actually this page here on the left and say, oh yeah, there were 3 trees and now they're gone. Then yeah, they would get a letter and we would reference back to whatever permit they had, whether it was a development permit or a city tree permit replacement, and say, hey, where are these trees? What's the explanation here?
Yeah,
but it is complaint based.
Right. And I can see someone saying, oh yeah, I just didn't get around to it. I'll put it in tomorrow. Because if you put in a brand new reforestation tree, it's a big difference in cost for a 24-gallon tree versus a very mature 36 or larger.
Yeah, thousands of dollars.
Right. So it seems like someone who's building a $3 million house might take that risk and just, oh yeah, I'll do your tree requirement. And all of a sudden those trees died and I didn't get around to replacing them until I go to sell the house or do some other new permit.
Yeah.
There's just nothing to stop that.
But to get them signed off, don't they have, is there someone do you do that?
Yeah, but once
someone goes around and signs it off?
But one thing after the
they
sign off,
take it out?
Once it's signed off, well, that's what
Dies.
anyway. Right now, the loophole is that you
Oh,
yank them out and they're not
I
protected.
see.
and there's
I see.
nothing we could do.
I
But
see.
right now, we have something we can do. Say, yeah, you have to plan it. You have to do this and that. But you're right. Fortunately, most people aren't that way.
Yeah, I hear you.
But you're right. It's not perfect.
For sure.
And if adjustments need to be made as we go through this, then we will go back to council for an amendment.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I would note too that the 5-year requirement, the ordinance does give the director discretion to require security to confirm that those replacement trees would last 5 years. So if we have some kind of serial offender or this is becoming a problem, the director does have discretion under the ordinance to start implementing his discretion there and requiring that security.
Okay. The only reason I'm even asking these questions is because I do see motivation. I mean, I'm a contractor and I see motivation with clients of having 3 decent sized trees in a very small lot. It really limits some of people's wish lists of what they can do.
Yeah.
But I could see a motivation of, well, let's just get around it and then we'll do what we want. And then if we ever go to sell a house, we'll put in a new tree or whatever. That's all.
Fair points. And we did have these discussions. One of the members of the Beautification Commission is a retired architect, and he said, gosh, if I could just pay the in lieu fee, then I'd just pay to play. Right? I'll just pay that fee. That way I can maximize lot space. That's why the director has discretion to say, no, I will allow the in lieu fee in certain situations. The goal here is for reforestation, getting trees in the ground.
Can you also, I'm sorry, Commissioner Lowenthal, I didn't mean to interrupt,
I'm done.
but so in the same vein, let's say, I don't know what calculation, do you figure this big project needs 3 trees? So you also have the discretion to say, you can fit 2 in, but 1, we're going to get the in lieu fee. You can sort of mix and
Yes.
match. Okay.
Yes, and we've done that with success, agreeable applicants. Yeah, the goal isn't to be punitive or anything like that. It's realizing what our community goal is and what can we realistically do on private property, right? Balancing what that owner might want and what's the neighborhood look like and what is our ultimate goal for the community urban forest.
Thank you for all your help on
Sure.
the real
Yeah.
estate side.
No problem.
been a little bit more challenging.
Hmm. Well, it's an interesting topic, right?
Mhm.
Really. So thank you. Great. You did a great job, your team.
Do any members of the public wish to speak on this item?
Hmm.
Okay. Then I'll close the public hearing. Any other comments? No? Okay. Then we'll move on to agenda item number 9, commissioner reports. Any commissioner reports this evening? Director reports or staff reports?
The only thing I wanted to share, and you've probably heard about this already at the last city council meeting, the council authorized the city manager to negotiate and enter into a lease and purchase agreement for the building at 1440 Chapin for use as the city's new city hall. So there's a lot more information in the staff report from the February 18th meeting. So if you're more interested in that, you can take a look at that staff report. So that's all I had.
Thank you very much. Then we will adjourn this meeting at 8:46. Oh,
I'm just
Sorry?
wondering what happened
Oh.
here?
not adjourned yet.
What would happen here?
They don't know yet.
What's the question?
To 14, oh, you'd move to 14?
Oh, that's still all part of the negotiation and yeah.
There's a lot of
It is-
trees on this property.
There are a lot of,
Yeah.
the ordinance is going to be very, Yeah.
One,
no, I mean, the area, the property is zoned for multi-unit residential, so it's probably what it would envision to be.
Be looked at to see if it's a historic resource as well.
That'll all be part of the review, yeah.
the other thing is Monday night, is Mercy on the agenda for city council,
March 3rd.
March 3rd?
So yes, next Monday night.
Is next Monday, March 3rd?
Short month. Commissioner Say.
Bring up a logistical thing. I don't know if it's appropriate to talk about it in this meeting here, but just wondering if anybody else is having problems with all the huge downloads for our packages, if there's any way that we can have a Dropbox link instead that just opens each file,
We can,
Off the link, off the agenda, and
but they download,
one file at a time.
Yeah, that's right.
but you could download them all.
you would do that in Dropbox as well, so I don't know. I mean, it'd be the same download.
No.
You'd be downloading every file.
You can just open a document, right, and see it. You don't have to download it.
Well, same thing with the links in the agenda. You click on the link and it opens up the file.
No, they download. They
They
force you to download.
On mine also, I'm going, do you guys have,
That you may have to look at your computer settings or download settings then.
I think it just automatically goes to a little arrow thing and then you have to open it and move it to a whole different folder. To have it.
You can just drag it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Typically, if that happens, you just
Lot of
click on that
Things.
file, it'll open it up and then you can download it.
It's been automatically downloaded.
But
I can't do a thing until
s-
fully 100%.
so you may have to just look at your settings.
Yeah,
Hey,
those-
Are you clicking on the PDF agenda, or are you clicking on the website that has like the list of?
So the PDF agenda, then it has all the links in each agenda item in
Hmm.
blue, right? As soon as I touch it, it goes through this long download thing. I do have a Mac.
Do you have apples, all of you?
Mhm.
And you're not having trouble?
You don't have to download?
I'm not having any problems.
You can just immediately,
Load it and I drag it over to.
Oh, you-
Just-
You know-
when those, your download, I can download eventually, but I want to just
Yeah.
open it.
One-
But it,
We should have this,
Sorry.
we can have this discussion with staff or we can try to help you with your down.
Just a related comment, though. I noticed the city council has a separate link to, like, it's consolidated. So you don't have to click on 5 different attachments separately to download. They have one that combines all of them.
That's,
Right, but they typically get 300-400 pages on that one PDF, so it's sometimes hard to find. And the file size may be really large, but
Yeah, it's pretty time consuming for us to click on 5 links for every project,
Mhm.
get them all downloaded, and then I create a folder separate and
Right.
drag them all. So it'd be really nice to have a one-click option.
yeah.
okay, I mean, we could see if we can look.
Too.
And then, exactly, yeah.
Then go in after.
Or even just a download all button that downloads them all as separate files.
There you go.
Click.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
thank you.
All right, that's our IT hour. All right, we are adjourned at 8:50 PM.